I'm Elisa Parker. It is the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. We're here at the Media Lounge, and I think the Media Lounge has actually been happening here at the festival for at least 14 years. And many thanks to our incredible crew who's been part of this process and journey, and all the volunteers as well. So in addition to the filmmakers, the storytellers, the guests who are featured, we also have panel discussions and coffee talks and workshops and folks who are experts in the field of environmental action, environmental justice. And Wade, who's joined us today, is no stranger to Wild and Scenic, nor is he a stranger to the work on taking action in our state. He's the California Natural Resources Secretary, and he is a big part, I'm going to say you're a big part, Wade, of being here. We love having you, so welcome back.
Oh, I love it. This is such a fun weekend. I think this is my third or fourth Wild and Scenic, and I have my family, I have my friends up here. We've had a great weekend.
What has been a highlight for you so far?
I mean, to me, it's just the stories that get told. I mean, we have the world's best environmental films here.
Yes.
And solutions from across the planet, incredible leaders from across the planet. So I draw a lot of inspiration. I always learn a lot and get inspired as well.
Do you know what's one thing that you took away or learned? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, yesterday it was a movie about kelp, restoring kelp, and it was a woman in the UK who essentially did a short movie about this incredible movement around the UK to restore kelp forests off the coast, which are really beneficial not only to wildlife but to storing carbon.
Yeah.
So really fun story and a really hopeful story.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Wade, just to give people some context, you were appointed by Governor Newsom, and you are pretty much like I'm going to say like a water keeper for us, and also, I mean, land and water, but I know that's a big focus. Can you tell us about what your priorities are right now in this role?
Sure. The Natural Resources Agency in California, we have within our agency CAL FIRE, so that's forestry and wildfire fighting. We have our Department of Water Resources, water supply, fish and wildlife, taking care of nature. We have our state conservancies all around protecting land. So essentially we're nature stewards.
Nature stewards, yeah.
And right now we're really focused on adapting to climate change and its impacts, whether it's wildfire, drought, floods, and doing so with nature-based solutions.
Okay. What would be one example? Because I know right now it seems like we are in a bunch of craziness here in California. I mean, both here in Nevada County, of course, we've had forest fires, which have seemed inevitable lately. And then, of course, drought. And of course, there's like atmospheric rivers happening all over. I mean, it's quite a bit. So what is that looking like for you right now in the direction that you're taking? Like, and what's happening around this too? So it doesn't seem so reactive for everybody.
Well, it's about stepping back and taking a more holistic approach to managing the environment and actually sort of going back to the future. So in other words, following some practices that have been on the landscape for a very long time. One of our sets of leaders in the state that we're following are our tribal leaders. So California Native American tribes have been caring for what we now know as California for over 10,000 years. And practices like what they call cultural fire, introducing prescribed fire, low-level fire on the landscape, that kept down catastrophic wildfire risk for thousands of years before European contact. And then the state of California came along and outlawed those practices.
What?
Yeah. So we're now then going back and understanding what are these holistic practices that we need to protect nature, but also to protect ourselves.
That's awesome. So now we're implementing some of those practices.
Yeah. Now we're in a race against time, of course, because climate change is accelerating. Its impacts are worsening, but there's so much to be hopeful about across our state, even in this neck of the woods. Another example is restoring mountain meadows. So a lot of our mountain meadows have been degraded over time, things like cattle grazing, etc. They're these big sponges in the Sierra Nevada mountain range that actually capture storms like we're having this weekend, and then they'll allow for the slow dispersal of the water over time. So we're restoring mountain meadows not only as a way to benefit wildlife and nature, but our water supply as well.
So I believe I read in the state of California with Newsom's agenda, it was preserving like 30%.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that? Because I just saw that number. I'm like, okay, that's intriguing. And California is a pioneer, by the way, in so many ways.
I'm really excited about this. We're leading the world in our 30 by 30 movement, and that is to protect 30% of California's land. We're a big state, over 104 million acres. So we're going to protect 30% of our land, 30% of our coastal waters, durably protected, principally for ecological benefit. In other words, allowing people and nature to thrive together by protecting more of our lands. And what's remarkable is that through the United Nations, countries around the world have now agreed on paper to protect 30% of their lands. But California is leading the way, demonstrating how to do it and how to do it in a meaningful way. So it's not just paper protection, but it's actually benefiting, again, people and nature together.
How does this benefit, or I should say, how do we engage then? Is like everyday people who are hearing this right now, like what does this mean to us? Like, how do we get involved in this, right? Because I would think that's a big task, and I would think it involves pretty much all of us as citizens of this state.
100%. I mean, it's a locally driven movement, so it's not like people like me sitting in Sacramento, our state capital, with a list of places to protect. It's supporting, groups like the South Yuba River Citizens League, like Circle, but also community-based land trust, conservation organizations, protecting open space in the backyard of communities across the state. Since I've began coming up to Nevada City, more and more places around this community are actually being preserved, both for public access, but also for environmental benefit. So we're breathing life into those efforts. So for Californians, and I would say people across the world, it's really championing those conservation projects in your area.
Okay.
There's also a lot we can do in our own lives, in our own yards, to protect biodiversity, whether it's planting native plants that reduce water usage, or planting pollinator-friendly habitat. So much we can do in our lives.
So there's, I'm assuming, a lot of education and public education that's coming along with this initiative. And also it sounds like deeply ingrained in a collective process. You just mentioned a couple of organizations, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So does this provide funding for some of those too?
Yeah. So California, under our governor, Gavin Newsom, and our legislature, we have $1 billion, over $1 billion actually, of funding for these conservation projects, these habitat protection projects, wildlife connectivity projects. We're building nature bridges over highways to connect habitat. Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of funding, but more is needed. So we're working with foundations and philanthropies and to really help more projects take off across the state. Okay, that's fantastic. Wade, it's always good to see you here at Wild and Scenic. Yeah. What do you want to tell folks about why they need to come and engage in this festival? These are challenging times. Our world faces so many crises, including climate change and biodiversity loss, but we have solutions, and people across the world are putting those solutions in practice. Come to Wild and Scenic, educate yourself, inspire yourself to take action in your own lives. Wade Crowfoot, thank you so much. It's so great to have you here with us. We look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm Elisa Parker. It's Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Very good. That was amazing.